If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. For one, it's free, and there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So make sure you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to Growth with Portia, a weekly conversation for your personal and professional growth. Here is your host, Portia Booker.
Hey listeners, welcome to Groove with Portia. I'm your host, Portia Booker, and yes, this is my real name. So, question for you. Did you bring your curious mind today? If so, I don't want to keep you waiting. Let's dive in. I make it a point to ask questions. Now, I'm a firm believer that no question is a stupid question. A few weeks ago, I asked my mentors and coaches for help when normally, being the strong Portia that I am, I normally try to do everything myself. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful today that I took initiative to ask for their guidance because I felt a huge weight lift from my shoulders. So, question for my listeners today. What is stopping you from asking those tough questions? Let that sink in. So today I'm joined by a driven individual who is on a mission to educate others on a topic that is viewed as complex. Growing up being labeled differently, he knows the trials and obstacles this brings. Now, his passion for helping those in need fuels his drive to provide a client experience that exceeds any law firm in America. So welcome, founder of Liner Legal, Mr. Michael Lehner himself. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm great. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for having me here today.
You know, Michael, this is truly an honor for me because, like I mentioned in the beginning, this topic that we're going to discuss is often viewed as so complex, and we got to kind of what I call clear the air on that. And so, Michael, I'd love to start off my conversations with gratitude. What are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for so many things today. And it's interesting. I do something every single morning where I wake up and the very first thing I do every morning is I think of three things in particular that I'm grateful for. And I don't allow myself to repeat themselves. It would be easy for me to look at my two children and say how grateful that I am for them, or look at, the wonderful, business that I've been able to build and think about how grateful that I am. But, in particular, what I'm feeling grateful for right now is the opportunity to connect with your audience and hopefully debunk some of the myths about Social Security disability, which is the programs that I help people get benefits from. That's what my law practice is. And I'm grateful that for the opportunity to be here with you. And I'm hoping that we can really help some people because, as you said in your introduction, that's why I do this. There's a lot of areas of law, but what has kept me in this game and really inspired me to grow my practice and go from, a small local practice to now, a nationwide practice. What's really fueled that is wanting to help people. It hasn't even been a profit motive. And so the ability to find new audiences to help, there's nothing that makes me feel more gratitude than that.
Michael, I really love what you mentioned about never having the same three things on your gratitude list. That is the exact same thing that I do every day because let's be honest, we need to learn to live more in the moment. And to your point about, complex situations like with Social Security disability, I can tell you from personal experience, I'm like, oh, I'm not touching that. That seems way too out of my education grade. But let's be honest, we can all find a common ground or a way to empower others by meeting them where they are. And so, Michael, for our listeners who are tuning in, maybe can you elaborate? What are some of the common misconceptions about applying for Social Security disability benefits?
There are so many, Portia. It's hard to decide even where to start with that. I would say, and I just wrote a long article about this. One thing in particular is people give up. We're all told when we are young, never give up. And but what people need to understand is that this is a system that is built on getting people to give up and go away. It is an insurance program that's even in the name of the benefits, Social Security Disability Insurance. Um, and they operate it no different than Progressive or Geico or the General or any of those insurance companies that you see advertising on television. It's about maximizing what's coming in and minimizing what's going out. Now, the government isn't trying to turn a profit on the disability programs like a private company would, but they do at least need there to be the same amount of money coming in as there is going out. And the way that they, try and make that happen is by denying people and hoping that they give up and go away. And sadly, they're very successful with it. The numbers that Social Security released last year showed that of the people who applied for disability and were denied, half of them did not appeal before seeing an administrative law judge, which is where people generally are going to have their best chance of being approved. There's also other misconceptions even within that, which is when people do get denied, instead of appealing, they'll just file a brand new application. The key is to keep your case moving forward. There's just so many misconceptions that people have. Here's a big one, and I really want it just because I know it's so important to your listeners. In particular, one thing that I hear a lot is, I don't get why I was denied. Can't they see in my records that I have been diagnosed with depression or that I have been diagnosed with a bipolar disorder? The question is not about diagnosis. That is not, a diagnosis does not qualify somebody for disability benefits. It is required. You do need to have a diagnosis in order to be found disabled, but that's just one piece of it. What's important is what are your functional limitations? What is it about your depression, or what is it about your bipolar disorder that would make you unable to work? Are you unable to focus and concentrate well enough to get through an 8-hour workday, 5 days a week? Are you unable to take simple instructions or learn new tasks? Can you not interact appropriately with supervisors and coworkers to even if you were working in a job where you were mostly independent, can the occasional supervision that's required in any job, would that set somebody off because of the nature of their mental health impairment? Those are the things that Social Security cares about when determining whether or not you're disabled. It's not just the diagnosis, because there's a lot of people who have a bipolar disorder, who have a depressive disorder, who can work. And, a great example of that is me. Just to kind of go into my story a little bit, and you were, sharing a bit about it in your introduction. The reason that I do this work is because I realized that if I weren't treating for some of the medical issues that I have, and successfully treating, frankly, when I was younger in particular, if I didn't have such supportive parents and a supportive family that never gave up on me, I was expelled from schools. My mom had to quit working because she was just always having to leave her job to come and pick me up from school. I, to this day, have motor tic syndrome, which is a form of Tourette's. I get what are called cluster headaches, where it's not a migraine headache. It's not the type of headache where you can take an aspirin or an Advil and it goes away. I mean, I get headaches where I literally feel like my head is exploding and I'm gonna die. And thankfully, the medication that I take for them after a period of time controls it and helps. But I'm able to work because I have created an environment around me that allows me to work within that. And I also am treating. So that's another thing that's important when we talk about the misconceptions. A lot of people say, well, I have all of these symptoms, but I'm not, seeing doctors, or I'm not getting the right treatment. Social Security wants to know how you are functioning when you're receiving the proper care. If somebody has a mental health condition, but they're not seeing a psychiatrist or a counselor, or they're not getting the help that they need, Social Security says, well, we don't know how you would function if you were getting the best benefit. So, these are just some of the many misconceptions, and maybe there's some that you want to address and ask about that you've heard from your listeners.
Well, Micah, you touched on the key one when it comes to mental health, because that's where, to me, there's so much gray. And you already hit the nail on the head, because Social Security wants to know, one, are you in some type of treatment environment where we can gauge, okay, you say you have depression, anxiety, bipolar, borderline personality, but I need to see, how are you doing with whatever medication you're on, whatever counselors you're seeing? Are you able to function at work? How are you interacting with your family? They need that type of documentation or proof in the pudding, they say, that guarantees them that they're not just giving out free money for, just like you said, a diagnosis. A diagnosis can be anything. That's like you saying, well, I want my car to be red, and you get an orange car. Right? It's like, who cares? The diagnosis means nothing unless we have like proof. And so, Michael, for our listeners who are tuning in, how should they go about when they get denied the first time for mental health benefits, etc.? What should be their next steps? Should they meet with their therapist and get maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 months of records of their progress, or not so much progress? What should be their next steps in that arena?
I would rewind the clock on that question a little bit, if you don't mind me kind of going out of order here. When somebody's denied, the answer is they should appeal. But I want to address what somebody should do probably before they've even applied, because I think that that's another area where there's a lot of misconceptions. A lot of times people will say, oh, I was just diagnosed with this condition or that condition, and then they immediately rush to file for disability. Hold your horses. And that's where exactly what you said, before you quickly go and file an application because you just received a diagnosis, I think that the first thing that you should do is work with your therapist or psychiatrist, if it's a mental health condition, and see if they can work with you to help improve your circumstances. Mental health conditions, depending on the severity, are extremely tricky. I don't have to tell you that. I don't have to tell your audience that. Many of them are lifelong, and the reality is, medications are a bandage. Therapy is probably the only way that somebody could ever heal themselves, if that's ever even possible. Medications are just covering it up, by trying to trick the brain into feeling something else. But the purpose of the treatment that you get from doctors and therapists and counselors and an entire treatment team is to restore the ability to function. So how can Social Security answer the question of how you would function in a work environment when you're getting your best treatment if you haven't done it yet? And that leads to so many denials by itself, is that people's first reaction is just to go ahead and apply, instead of first saying, well, let's see what I can do to, take charge of this condition. It's often a catch-22 for people who have mental health issues as well, because, the things that kill their cases are products of their mental health. Missed appointments, right? I tell my clients, you need to keep up with your treatment, because as soon as you stop treating, Social Security says you're not compliant and they deny you for that. Why are people missing their appointments? Because they're depressed or because they're feeling anxious and can't, attend their appointments. Even Zoom appointments, people sometimes can't attend because of a mental health condition. Certainly, I think that one of the pandemic silver linings has been the greater access to telehealth. And I think especially for the mental health community, before, most of my clients, all of their patient care was in person. So my clients with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, you name it, they had to go to see their case manager, their therapist, their psychiatrist in an office. That's hard. That's hard for them. That's why they're not working. They can't keep a schedule. They can't maintain they can't get where they need to go because of their health. So with telehealth, at least now you can just hit a button and see somebody, but it doesn't solve everything. And I think that's one thing that's important for people to understand is, it's kind of a catch-22, because the reason that people are missing these appointments is because of the mental health condition that's leading them to apply. So it's tough. And judges have the best job in the world because they get to decide a case and look at it either way. I have seen unfavorable decisions where a judge said, well, why wouldn't this person be able to work? They didn't miss any appointments. They never argued with their provider. They appeared calm and, like they were, engaged in all of their appointments. So they can work. By the same token, that same judge then, when somebody else was missing appointments, said they were non-compliant and denied them for that reason. So you're kind of, I think the saying is damned if you do, damned if you don't. They can use whatever they want to support the conclusion that they want to come to. So, but the key is, and ultimately, I still believe in this, it's important that you're treating, that you're keeping up with your providers, and that you are reporting all of your symptoms and functional limitations to them.
Michael, I have to say that was very spot on, that catch-22 of, hey, I see that you're making it to all these appointments every single Tuesday, but also you're able to go to work. So why should we approve you if you are deemed functionable? And Michael, how can really people get their benefits if their mental health is so crippling, when one picture is painted this way in the documentation, but then another picture is being painted when they're at home, when they're at work? They may have some angry outbursts. They may have days where they miss their medication because they're too tired to get up. They're, losing weight. Like, that's what happened to me. When I was really heavily plagued by depression, I went from a size maybe 14, 16 in pants all the way to a 9 in under 90 days because of how sick I was, so tired, depressed, etc. So, Michael, what are some steps or tips that you could recommend if somebody is in that catch-22 boat where they are proving their case, the black and white paperwork is there, but there's a different view that's being taken into consideration by the magistrate?
Communicate. People do not win their disability case, and this is so important. You're leading me into a point that I love sharing with people, and that I really want all your listeners, whether they're applying for disability benefits, or even if they have them and they're trying to figure out how to preserve them, because you have to keep doing these things to keep them as well. You don't get disability forever, okay? People do not get approved for disability because of how they fill out a form and the symptoms that you report to Social Security. They do not get approved for disability because of what you call my office and tell me, or tell one of my paralegals. You don't get approved because you tell a great story to the judge under oath at your hearing. It's about your record. So if you're missing appointments because of your mental health, I get it. But then what you need to do is the next time you have an appointment, or I wouldn't even wait until then, I would call as soon as you're feeling well enough and let your counselor, doctor, whoever you missed an appointment with know, hey, I just want you to know the reason that I missed that appointment yesterday or the day before. I haven't left my bed for 3 days. I have been in such a deep funk that I haven't been able to do anything. Why is that important? Because that gets documented too. So now, instead of it just being a missed appointment, it's actually a symptom of it's more evidence that's supportive of the case. So we're taking a negative and we're actually turning it into something that's helpful. They can't just say you're non-compliant. Well, why didn't they attend the appointment? They were too sick to attend the appointment. You can't ding someone for that. So it's all about the communication. It's about making your record. I can't do that for my clients, right? I could be the greatest lawyer in the world. Some think I am. But if I don't have decent medical records or mental health records, I can't win a case. It takes the client, and we give our clients the tools. One thing that I think that I'm really proud of, and what's allowed my law firm to grow, is that we communicate all these tips and tricks and tools to our clients. And we've got a YouTube channel with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos sharing these tips. And throughout the course of us representing someone, we are constantly sending them communication, reminding them of all these different things that I'm going over with you today, and so much more, because they're just so important for people to know. But if you aren't sharing these things with your treatment team, we really can't win your case.
And Micah, I'm glad you reinforced that, because again, that's the trick. That's the secret hidden sauce within trying to make the perfect spaghetti, is you've got to tell what the truth is, right? And I think there's still that stigma. There's still that shame of, well, if I tell my doctor all of this stuff that's going on with me, they'll have me committed to an institution, or they'll think that I'm severely suicidal and need to be put away from society. So I think, again, we just have to really gauge what's more important here. Is my well-being not good enough where I can't function in society? Or is it where I'm literally crippled to get out of bed to even go visit with my family and be around family functions, to the point that I'm not even enjoying life anymore? So I think we really need to just reinforce honesty.
Yeah. Honesty and transparency, those two things together. The things that I need my clients to be sharing with their doctors are difficult conversation points. It's interesting. Sometimes my most disabled clients, and I hate saying things like most disabled, because, clients, you can't put them on a spectrum of most disabled to least disabled. It doesn't work that way. It's apples and oranges and pears, and people have different impairments. But I think you'll understand where I'm going with this. I have a lot of clients who they can't work anymore. But say, for example, they're somebody who has a really strong work history, right? And they come from a family where they've been told their whole life, you work for what's yours, right? You don't ask for anything. You put on your hard hat, you go to work every day, you keep your mouth, quiet. A lot of people shun mental health treatment. They shun opening up about it, but they're struggling inside, whether it's for a physical reason or a mental reason. Then when they become unable to work, they might be out of work for a long time, and they're not getting the help that they need because of that mentality that's been developed inside of them, which is, I don't ask for help. I just keep pushing. I keep going through it. And so when they go to the doctor, all they want to do is get some medication and leave. They give the bare minimum amount of information. There's nothing worse in a disability case than my client who is just trying to get out the door or just trying to get off the video. Because if you're not showing up and, kind of circling back, if you're not showing up and telling them these facts that you don't want to tell, I'm not able to be intimate with my spouse anymore because I can't feel connected to people. I'm not able to attend family functions because I just feel fits of rage when I'm around, even 3 or 4 people. I used this example earlier, but I think it's just such a telling example. I spent 4 days last week where I literally, other than to go to the bathroom, did not leave my bed. I hear things like that from my clients all the time. They tell me this for some reason, maybe because, I'm a little bit easier to talk to than a lot of doctors. But if you're not sharing this with your providers, if it's not in the documentation, it doesn't exist. We call them Michaelisms in my office. The sayings that I've come up with over the years. And one of the things that a Michaelism that we use a lot is, if it's not in your records, it didn't happen. If your records don't say that you didn't leave bed for 4 days, you weren't in bed for 4 days. That's what Social Security is going to assume. If you want it to exist, get it in the records. There you have it.
I agree. I 100% agree with that, Michael, because it's, again, that you're battling the stigma that's placed on society, and then you're also battling the stigma that is plagued within the way that you grew up, whether you were socially, economically advantaged, you grew up in a house of color where mental health is taboo. A number of things play a factor in you being honest and transparent. And we have to learn to just, again, like what I mentioned in the beginning, ask those tough questions, ask for help when you see that you're really crippled. And I know you don't like to say more disabled. What I like to say, Michael, is people who are more susceptible to mental wellness obstacles, because then there's some people like myself who fall in that boat. And we've all been there at some point in our life, but just some people are what I call, like, how when you would put little mothballs to get rid of the moths in your house,
Sure.
It's like some of us have the repellent of the mental wellness obstacles, while others of us are like honey to it. So it's, again, it's that kind of catch, and just knowing what boat you fall in and just really taking it step by step, moment by moment.
Right.
And Michael, for our listeners, again, thank you so much for sharing this, because so many people are in this boat right now that need this. If they're interested, Michael, in connecting with you and learning more about your law firm, is there a website, social media handle, or phone number you can share with us today?
Oh, yeah. You can visit us on our website, which is just linerlegal.com. We're on all social media platforms. We're on Facebook. Our YouTube page, I think that's a really great resource for people. If you type in Liner Legal, LINER, you are going to find tons and tons and tons of videos that are informative about how to fill out any paperwork that Social Security sends. What is a consultative exam if Social Security sends you to one? What should you expect at a disability hearing? Just the common questions that get asked. But what happens is, anytime somebody calls into our office with a question, if we haven't shot a video about it before, we shoot a video about it. And but we're on all social media platforms, and we're always available and happy to answer your questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Michael. Michael, I got to ask this. I mean, you obviously are so passionate about what you do, helping other people, especially from the way that you grew up, where you knew how being labeled differently brought so many different complexities in itself, and often the way that you received help from other people. So how do you find that balance, Michael, between your passion for helping others and prioritizing your mental well-being?
The more that I give to other people, the better I am able to manage myself. So I'll be honest, I'm not looking for balance in my life. And I know that sounds a little bit strange. I'm really not looking for balance. I want to go all out all the time. But what I do know is the more that I put into helping other people, the more lives that we're able to help, the more, people that we're able to touch, the better that I feel. And so I can prioritize other people and elevate myself at the same time. And that kind of goes back to your very first question, which is just kind of living a life of gratitude. I have been given so much. I, most importantly, parents that never gave up on me, even when it would have been easy for them to do that. To this day, my parents are my biggest supporters in the world. And because that has been instilled in me from a young age, and just watching that and seeing that and knowing I turned left, but I could have turned right, it inspires me to keep going. And I'm young. I got a lot of life left in front of me. I mean, it's crazy. This month we're celebrating our 9-year anniversary, so almost coming up on 10 years. But I'm only 37 years old. We've got a lot. There's a lot more growth that's going to happen with my practice, and we do some cool things. I mean, I don't know any other law firms that have someone whose job it is not just to work on their cases, but to get involved with their clients' lives. And I think you've interacted with our client concierge, Jordan, who, her role is just to call and check on our clients and make sure that they're doing okay and see what she can do to help them, how she can help them navigate the community and do things like that. But the more that we do to help other people, the more it just seems to come back to us. And now we make a concerted effort to give, because the world really does go around that way. I hope other people can adopt that same philosophy.
100%. Like you said, gratitude sets the tone for my day every single day. And I'm grateful for everything that I get, every person who I interact with, like this conversation. I mean, how did this fall into my lap? You just never know sometimes. But I believe that all of our stories are not meant for us. Our stories are for other people, to keep the circle of inspiration alive and to stop other people's dreams, goals, and aspirations from making the graveyard richer. But that's for a whole nother day.
Yeah.
Michael, you have left us with so many nuggets, so much food for thought. We're going to be wrapping up here soon. I always love to say this question for last. What words of inspiration, Michael, can you leave with our listeners today? Whether it's someone who was once in your shoes, expelled from school because of various different behavioral things that were out of their control, or if there's a family member who wants to be that advocate for their loved one who has a crippling or they're susceptible to mental wellness obstacles. They want to be their cheerleader and advocate, but maybe they're not sure what to do. What words of inspiration can you leave with our listeners today, Michael?
Always look ahead. I'm thinking back to, why I force myself to come up with 3 different things every single day that I am grateful for. It would be very easy for me, if I was just recycling things, to look back and say, like I said, I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for my business. I'm grateful for my friends or something material, but that would all be looking back. When you look forward, and I look at my calendar, or I look at, like getting to talk to you and connect with your audience today. When you look forward, you find new avenues for inspiration. You find new avenues for that gratitude. You find, new vehicles for connecting with people. And to me, it really is about keeping your eye on what's ahead. And it doesn't mean you forget the past, because the past informs our present and it informs our future. But always remember, tomorrow is going to be better than yesterday.
I love that, Michael. Tomorrow is better than yesterday. I always say kind of my phrase on that is every day is great that ends in Y. And it truly is, because you have a new start to each day. You have an opportunity and a choice to either continue to be the victim of yesterday or the victor of tomorrow.
Yep.
Well, everybody, that was Mr. Michael Liner that you heard from. And that concludes another episode of Grew with Portia on this Motivation Monday. Thanks for listening, and have a great and awesome week, everybody.